Are you looking for a loan on a leasehold property? Guess what? They're not very common, but they are a little complicated. So I had a good friend come on today to share with you some tips on how to get financing on a leasehold property in the state of Hawaii. So stay tuned. Hey, aloha guys, Kristine Dugan here. I am with my good friend Mina from Element Mortgage, and we are going to talk about leasehold properties because I get a lot of questions for people that want to buy a leasehold property. And for those of you that are like, what the heck is a leasehold? In real estate, you have fee simple, which is like the traditional real estate. Then there's leasehold. Leasehold is that you only own the right to be in the property, you don't own the land. Where a fee simple, you own the land and you own the right to be in the property and all the improvements upon the property. So just want to throw that out there for leasehold. Now, leasehold projects are usually condos. There's some other different projects on Kauai that are leasehold, but people want to know, how can I buy leasehold and get a loan on it? So that's where my good friend Mina comes in. So Mina, share with us today. Let's say someone's thinking about buying a leasehold, a Kiahuna plantation that's like $600,000 on the south shore of Kauai. What does that look like? How do they get money for that?
You just stole my thunder. I was going to role play with you and be like, "Hi, Kristine, I want to purchase this condo. It's $100,000.
Great
How
mind.
can I do it?"
Yeah,
I mean, but that,
and
yeah.
I think you just pointed out something great because, yeah, the leasehold, you said $100,000, but like I'm talking about $600,000. And that is actually affordable on Kauai. Maybe $400,000, maybe 300 would be like the bare minimum of a leasehold. But talk to us a little bit about what, let's say there's a project, it has 20 years left on the lease because these properties usually have long-term leases that were negotiated years and years and years ago. And there's usually an expiration date. So let's say there's 20 years left on a property and I want to buy the 1-bedroom, 1-bath because I can vacation rent it at some point and me and my family have somewhere to come stay when I visit on Kauai. Walk us through it.
Okay, so I don't know if that 20-year number was arbitrary or not, but 20 years left on the lease is actually the minimum time frame that you need in order to be eligible to get financing. And so to explain that a little bit better, the banks are only willing to give you a minimum loan term of 15 years. So you can get anything from a 15-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage, but they're not willing to give you a lower term than 15 years. They also have a requirement that you have to have 5 years remaining on the lease beyond the loan term. I always lose people on that. But if you have 20 years left on the lease, you can qualify for a 15-year mortgage. If you have 22 years left on the lease, then they'll give you a 17-year mortgage. So the biggest thing about that is, great, you can get financing. However, if you do get a 15-year mortgage, then you're probably going to double your payments compared to what you would be paying on a 30-year. So those numbers may not work for you anymore from a cash flow standpoint, but all things to be considered. The best advice I can give you guys, if you're looking online and you happen to see something that's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. Do your research. Some people have never even heard of leasehold or fee simple because a lot of places in the mainland, it doesn't exist. Everything is fee simple, and that's the standard. So educate yourself on what leasehold is, what fee simple is. There's plenty of blogs and good write-ups out there on it, and you can call.
I'll put them in here.
Well, call Kristine too. I mean, it's not just like she explained it very well. You basically don't own, once your lease is expired, you don't own the house anymore.
Yeah,
Simply said.
I got this question so much that I actually wrote a blog post on fee simple versus leasehold. And there's benefits of both. It just depends on where you're at and what your goals are. I also wrote one on what happens when the lease expires, because there's some properties that the lease is going to expire in 2 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And so I think
what happens, Kristine, when the lease expires?
I wrote a blog about it. There's like 5 different options that pretty much like you can renegotiate your lease. It can be converted into a fee simple. Pretty much they could take it back. And if the owner of the whole project takes it back, it was just like you were leasing a commercial property. You have no vested interest in that other than you were just hanging out.
You're renting.
In the property. Yeah, like you're renting. It's long-term rent. So
right.
they're like, and that's where if you have short-term goals to make a little bit of cash flow, depending on how the numbers work, and want to have somewhere to come vacation here, that sounds great. However, if you're looking to build appreciation in real estate, because from what Mina had shared with us, if it's a 15-year loan, you might be able to buy something that is a little bit more of a long-term lease for you. You won't be able to use it just to drop in and drop out unless you buy a single family residence with maybe an ADU that you can rent out the ADU. Like there's a lot of different combinations, but do you want to gain the appreciation from the island of Kauai? Or do you just want to get a little bit of cash to pay for a place that you and your family can come use once or twice a year on Kauai? So a lot of different layers to it, but I will add all of the links below and you guys can go through. And then, call us for questions because it's a little bit more complicated than most people realize. But if you're seeing something, I just tell people, if you're seeing something for less than $600,000 with an ocean view on Kauai, like it's a leasehold. And by law, they have to put in the description of the property, it is a leasehold property. But kind of working through that, what that money, when you're writing that check every single month, what that money is going towards. Is very, I think, something to think about and consider.
Yeah. And when I explain this to clients, a lot of times they ask like, okay, well, when does it ever make sense then for people? You mentioned one, it's a short-term cash flow game where you are cash flowing quite heavily and it's going to end in the next 5 years or however long, right? Mm-hmm. The second is I'm on Oahu personally, and so I use Waikiki as a reference all the time, but I am 80 years old. I don't have any children that I want to pass property to. I want to live out my days, oceanfront in a beautiful 2-bedroom, 2-bath, fully furnished unit, and I only have to pay $200,000 for it. Like there's a very small box in which a leasehold makes sense for people, but for the vast majority of people, it's not something that's going to make sense. And
that's funny you mentioned that because I've talked to people that have called me on leasehold properties and they're older in their life and they're like, well, by the time the lease ends, I'm going to be dead and I don't care if my kids get it. Like they have kids and they're just like, I don't care. I'm like, okay, well, you do you.
Yeah, and that's our job, right? It's just our job is to just educate you guys as far as knowing what it is and what it means and what the implications are. And from there, obviously, the decision is yours. But for the average person, they're going to be looking for appreciation and equity in the home. They're going to be wanting to use the property, whether to live in or to rent out, and build appreciation and equity as the years go on and have somebody else pay their mortgage for them. But yes, there are certain situations where it does make sense.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today to learn about fee simple properties on Kauai with Mina. And I'm going to share with you Mina's contact information so you can reach out directly to her and ask her any additional questions you might have. But thank you so much for tuning in. And Mina, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.